Okay, guys, I think the stream should be up now. Just give us a few moments. We're doing back end stuff, so get you guys sorted in a bit. Yeah, they. Okay, hey guys, welcome to the Good Night Games stream. We're doing something a little differently here. We've got, we've got the Afro with the fro, who conveniently doesn't have a fro. We have the.
Well, this.
They can.
Oh wait, they can, that's right. That's right. He's sharing my screen right now.
So actually, they can't see. There. Yeah. Our newest man, Tom, my favorite. So, what are we doing?
I'm chewing ice at the moment. And can they even hear me?
It's not good.
Actually,
Oh no, it's not.
Why not?
It's bad for you.
they can.
As this man goes,
Hello.
you only live once.
Right, man. Just
I already started.
right. I can't stop now. I have 2 cubes left.
All
All
right.
right.
So, what is
Mhm.
the agenda for today, guys? Well,
Well, yeah.
Well, that is
Well,
true.
that's-
He's actually, since he's one of our newest members,
Since
he's
he's
going to be doing a crash course in Unreal.
A lavender sweater.
Technically, I am the
Is that
newest
deeper?
in this room.
Yeah. So don't be a noob.
Wow.
Get good.
Get
Get
good.
good.
It's only because we got rid of him. Because Michael left.
Michael.
Oh,
He
Michael.
had to go find himself.
He's still fine.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
No,
It's not even.
That's not what I don't.
I don't condone.
But anyway, so for this week,
It's not even.
The new one.
I'm about to mute the fuck out of you.
Doing the meat.
They're not even here to defend them.
And there we go. Mute it. So this week, we're going to be doing some more Unreal stuff. Oh, they can't hear you. They can only hear me. The international man of. All right, so yeah, let's get out from the bullshit and let's get to working. So Thomas here, he's actually going to be doing some crash coursing into Unreal, the blueprint system, and what the artist with a fro, Kai Kai, he'll be doing what exactly?
Can they hear me?
They can hear you.
Is my sound back?
Yeah.
All right, hey guys, it's Artist with a Fro, and we are back with the show. All right, yeah, so I pretty much took over my side again. So if you remember what we did last week, where we were talking about the different weapons for the ship, we are now up to the laser functions for our spacecraft. And we're going to go over sort of the different types of ways that we're going to allow this thing to fire off. It's going to do a loading screen instead, or it's going to go on a sort of delay, but it's a load-in instead of the same delay that we had for the Gatling gun where it fired one after the other. So that's what I'll be working on my screen if I am able to show you guys what I'm going to be doing. Yeah, so if I move mine over, Tom, like he's no longer seen.
Sorry, Tom.
Which is funny
Like
because
an apple
here's
still-
the thing though. Thomas, are you? I think that's you.
I think
at the
that's-
bottom,
Yeah.
yeah.
You. That's me.
No, I'm saying
you.
that's you. That's your.
That's your.
Do I look ugly?
Oh,
Damn.
Well,
I'm just saying.
that's kind of
is that
disrespectful.
really?
No,
Oh, because
Oh,
Kyle's
because.
comparing his.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of pushed out to the side. but
Right?
Say it is what it is.
Yeah. It's 2016. I mean, Harambe didn't die for this, but just whatever.
Christ.
right, it's Pokemon.
He really is.
Yeah.
I met him. One of the hikers had him. I was just like,
All right. So can they still hear me? Am I able to talk freely,
Yeah.
or is this your country?
It is my.
But you can talk.
Is this your stream? Or you take it over? Are they able to see what I'm doing over here as well? Can they view what I'm doing, or are they looking at
Yeah.
it?
That's it.
All right. Cool. So
And
Uh,
I just sorry for the weird setup now.
Setup.
I guess it's something that we'll figure out in the future.
I guess it's-
because there's several of us kind of streaming this little bubble.
And this little.
Little-
So
little-
we.
guys should be.
Yeah.
able to-
yeah, it's not like we could all stream at different times
Yeah,
on our own
Yeah, we
computer.
oh, what's that?
And-
here.
No, no.
Fucker.
Okay.
Hey, it's here, and I'm
Yeah.
just jumping over to. I'm just jumping
Right.
over to a good night game stream just to show you how to make a game.
What?
Oh, drop the car.
Yeah.
Do it. Why are you fucking the man?
Oh well, I mean,
Good, well,
any publicity is
It's
good
good,
publicity.
yes,
Because I bet.
I just
Because look,
You're just-
I would bet you at 12.
oh
Yeah, you're right.
Oh,
You're right. That I'm out.
I've- I've been holding this stream down for 4 videos straight.
oh.
I've been making 4 videos
Well,
talking
give
about
this man
these
a raise.
projectiles.
I don't know because it's different every week.
I mean, I knew I would've-
What?
So come on me. As a
What's going on? What?
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 We're having inner conflict. All right, guys.
They caught all this.
Ah,
Great. This is what you get a good night.
this is what you get at Midnight Game.
and straight up the Pokemon.
All right, so picking up where we left off, we're gonna first go back into our BP player ship and view all of the functions that we currently have. I apologize beforehand on the fact that this might be moving a little bit slower. And if at any time I become muted, then you know that I am probably not alive anymore. So, so looking at the event graph that we have here, we do have all the same functions. We have the boost, the draw, the HUD, the engine on and off, applying, acceleration, turning, etc., etc. So we're going to go over most of the basics for the functionality of the weapon, and it's going to follow the same criteria that we had for all of the previous weapons: the Gatling gun, the primary fire, spread gun, etc., etc. So the first thing that we want to do, we want to make sure that we actually have a ship that we can use for our projectiles or our weapons. We do have our standard plane mesh. Now this is the new model that we do have, which is thanks to what can I call you? What am I going to call you today?
What can CPO mean?
You just be
That's
CPO.
like Bobo line from Pokemon. It's like, you damn right, man.
No, because if you,
Yo,
you
have you
ever read the series of important event books?
You ever count Olaf?
But you know
Yo,
what was it?
Oh, that sounds about right.
certified.
Okay, so we're going to be
Real good at aiming it.
so the good ship model that we have is thanks to CPO, and we're just going to check and make sure that in our actual functions we do still have most of the other projectiles that we do that we have used in the previous video. So we have our standard one, our dual shot, our quad, our spread.
Okay.
We have both our Gatling and our dual Gatling guns. We have our Macross and or sort of heat-seeking, not really heat-seeking, but target-seeking missiles. And then at the last one, we do have our beam. So it seems that my screen is taking some time to load just because I wanted to open up the Macross bullet really quickly.
Get this man a new computer, I'm just saying.
So once we do have this up, and it does seem to be loaded, so once we do have this up, I can make sure that the model hasn't changed, and it hasn't, and then I can go back into the beam and we can get started.
While he's doing that, I just want to let you guys know that we actually, one of our streaming teams have released a new gameplay video of Malevolent Machines. Yeah, Thomas happens to be on that team. You want to speak about it a little bit, Tom?
You might want to get Oleg for that.
You want to speak about it a little bit, Tom?
Why don't we have one of the lead artists here talk about
I'll tag
the
team
game?
with her.
I talked last week, that's why.
That is also correct, but you can talk today, right?
I don't know
I mean,
what you want
your
me to
mouth's still
talk
back.
about.
You want to get shot. Like, you want some black on black
Here we
crime
go.
right now. Just like, what the fuck?
No, that's actually
Names need to be dropped. People need to get doxxed.
All right. So aside from the name drops that we're going to be doing, I'm going to bring you guys back to the that I do have here. There does seem to be a UI compiling error, so we're going to go into the event graph really quickly and just find out where our error is showing up, and it does seem to be right here where it has a set input game mode. So we're going to break this link for now. We're going to compile and make sure that everything is still functioning, which it is. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up our beam sort of projectile, and this is going to be the same form as the standard projectiles. As you can see, it is more or less stretched out to a wider range, as most beams do take up a certain amount of space. There are two ways that I can do this. The first and easiest way to do this would just be to go into our standard projectile and make sure that our firing rate, I'm sorry? Oh, okay. So the easiest way to do this would be to go into our standard projectile and make sure that our firing rate is at a speed enough where the standard projectile looks like a beam. The second way to do this, which is what I have for you guys right now, is just to then make an actual beam projectile and have it shoot out and then destroy on a certain time. So as you can see, this is So as you can see, this is the standard size for our laser. If we look at the scale of it, it's actually 18 by 1. And if we compare that to our standard projectile, we open up that one really quickly, and we go into our viewport. It is 0.8 by 1, by 0.1, sorry. So we're going to exit out. So you can see that there is a wide range of size difference in the two beams and the two projectiles, and size does matter in regards to this sort of function. Yes, I know that I probably just set up a meme, but we're gonna just bypass that really quickly. So now that we have our actual laser mesh, we're going to go into our event graph and we're going to make sure that it has the basic functionality of shooting out and then dying after a certain amount of time. We're going to make our lifespan. I'm going to delete this and just show you how we're going to have this functioning. So every time that you create a sort of model, you get these three different functions, which is your begin play, your actor begin overlap, and then your event tick. When our begin play works, it more or less functions in the way of it's alive and what is it going to do after that. So we're going to have our event begin play, and we're going to start it off with the same function that we have for all of our basic projectiles, which is setting a lifespan.
He left off the stream. Like, you don't have to buy your laptop. He doesn't have to charge you.
So if we look at our set
I mean,
lifespan,
kind of hoping the house
yeah.
right now, so you know.
So if we look at our set lifespan, we're going to actually set it to 1.5 seconds. That way our laser isn't in the world too long, and that way it doesn't travel as far as we need it to. So we're going to compile and save that really quickly, and we're going to go back into our BP player ship. Okay.
So you can see if you could like siphon.
So
like
from here,
the right way.
now we just need to follow the same sort of process that we did.
Wait, stopping this right now. Malevolent
Introduce
machines.
yourself.
We just
No, you spelled it wrong.
Wait.
You surely spelled it wrong. I give you one goddamn task. You don't even know how to speak English. Malevolent machines, new gameplay trailer, all of our social media. Follow it.
Can they
This
hear you?
motherfucker.
Yeah, they can hear him.
Check out the Instagram.
This time, then.
Yeah,
That shit's on fire.
because they're hearing it from your.
No, it's a desktop, so they can hear. They hear.
They hear.
They hear.
They hear.
So if y'all don't realize, we kind of running on a little situation right now.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Kinda-
It's charging.
It is charging.
Oh, it is. Oh wow.
All right. So, can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
They've been hearing you guys. Like I said, they've been hearing all of you.
Everyone else can hear.
I thought it was just mostly for you.
Yeah.
No, but
Here's the thing.
Here's
Because the way it happened is going through my line, but I can pick with your mics. I can pick up everything, so I don't even need my mic on.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I mean,
Cool.
they can hear
Got
it through both mics.
I just don't want like an echo like we had last time in the.
Well,
In the previous-
That's why I
lowered
lowered
everything.
Got it. Okay. So, going back into the stream and just figuring out what we're going to do for the functionality in regards to the laser, we're going to recreate the same function that we had for the rest of our projectiles. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to set this to a key press. Now, I'm going to repeat the same process that I have been doing for the past 3 videos, just so that way you guys can have a grasp as to how we make projectiles form and function in Unreal Engine 4. So the first thing that we need in order to get this started is a key press. This will work as the sort of button that will create our projectile. You can use this as the same function to move a character in a certain space. You can use this to activate a certain button, pull a lever, etc., push a button, activate an axle, etc., etc. So the key press that we're going to use is our 1 key, and you can set this to any key that you have on your keyboard. There are controller functions that you can implement later on that we might be talking about sort of later on in the stream channel. So be sure to check us out and follow us on all other forms of social media. But going back to what I said before, we're going to set our key press to 1, to the standard 1 key. That means when I press the 1 button, as you can see here, it'll have 2 different functions. It'll have a pressed function when my finger goes, when my finger sort of presses the 1 key, and then it'll have a release when I take my finger off of the 1 key. So from here, we also want to make a custom event. And this custom event will work as the name of what we want our thing to do. So we're going to create our custom event.
Oh, okay. Because I was about to say, I'm like, wait a minute.
And we're going to call it laser or yeah, we're actually going to call it laser.
How do you spell that?
Freaking lasers.
Is it L-A-Z-A? What are we doing?
Yeah, it's L-A-Z-A-H. So we have our laser, and it unfortunately isn't going to fire at the moment, but we are going to add some sort of functionality to it. And I have been using that word a lot, so the next thing I will have to invest in is a thesaurus, just to look up different words for
You
functionality.
don't understand.
Anyway,
So when we went to a good college.
anyway, for our function to work, we're going to add, we're pretty much just going to copy and paste everything that we had from the standard bullets, the Gatling guns, and the pulse bomb. So the first thing that we want to do, we want to drag off the pressed, and we want to make sure that we look for a do once function. Now, this is how all of our projectiles are working. This makes sure that it doesn't repeat or sort of spam our projectile multiple times or more times than we want it to as we are pressing the button. You can set this to spam certain things, like if we wanted to say have or fight against a barrage of projectiles or enemies, we can just sort of blast the entire screen full of these projectiles. However, right now in the game, we don't want to set that straight. We don't want to sort of give too much of an advantage for the player characters and make the game too easy. So we're going to make all of our functions, all of our projectiles work on the firing once sort of function. And as I said before, in the previous videos, all of the weapons that we did implement, the standard bullets, the dual shots, the quad shots, the pulse bombs, these are probably all going to go onto our enemies, and or they might return to our character as upgrades. However, the only two weapons that we are going to have as a player character are our enemy-seeking missiles and our standard sort of super laser that we're going to fire off after we maybe achieve a certain amount of combos or kill a certain amount of enemies. So this is the first weapon that we are going to have that will stay with our main character. So going from the one key press to the do once, we wanted to sort of do a function. And the function that it's going to do is going to be our custom event, which is the laser. Now we can change that really quickly. I'm going to go in here, I'm going to put fire laser. That way we know what we're actually going to be doing. And then before we do that, we're actually going to make sure that our released key goes back and resets our timer, just so that way when we release our function, it allows us to shoot another bullet. So we're going to drag off the release key, and we're going to go look for reset timer. I'm sorry, not reset timer. We're going to look for clear timer. So we're going to clear the timer by a function name, and the function name that we are going to clear it by is the same one that we have as our custom event. So we're going to take fire laser, and we're just going to implement that and plug that back into our reset for our do once. So as we have our function here, we're going to more or less drag this over to the side. That way I can have some sort of reorganization and show you guys what we're going to be doing. We're going to drag off our completed, and we're going to activate a timer by our function name.
That's, we're on the screen now. So please.
So what we have right now is we're setting a certain timer by our function name. Now this is the same timer that will clear once we release our hand off of the one key. So it's going to have the same function name. We're going to go over everything else that's in here, such as the time and the looping, and then the set object that we are going to set, or the object that we are going to put in our timer. So first off, we're going to more or less copy the same function name. It's going to have fire laser. We're going to make sure that it loops as a Boolean, and now the time here, we're going to drag off and we're going to promote that to a variable. Now in the previous videos, as well as this one, this is going to work as our firing rate. So we're going to call this as such. We're going to name it fire rate, and as you can see, we aren't able to sort of change any of the aspects or functions in it. We're going to compile our whole sort of event graph right now, and it'll give us the access to either change our firing rate and make it faster or slower depending. We're going to leave it as it is for now, just because we don't really need a firing rate for our laser. It only is going to fire once, and then you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can charge it up and then shoot it again. So we're just going to leave that as is. What we're going to do right now, though, is we're going to go down into our custom event, which has fire laser. And before we even actually add any sort of components to our custom event, we have to go back into our viewport and make sure that our actual laser is able to spawn from our ship. So if we look back at our viewport, we're going to go into the standard view. And as you can see here, we do have a front-facing sort of Zeppelin type ship. What we need to do now is determine where we want our ship laser to fire from. Primarily, it's going to fire from the front, but if we wanted to add any sort of like side functionality, like side lasers, lasers from a certain angle, so on and so forth, we can do so later on in the sort of creation of our spacecraft. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to add a component. We're going to search for an arrow component, and this is pretty much going to serve as the socket and or gun for our or chamber for our laser, bullet, etc. We're going to call it as such. We're going to call it laser, LAZAH cannon. Yeah, there we go. So the arrow will not be viewable in the world, but it is there just so that way we know where exactly. If I zoom out and move around, we can see where exactly our projectile is going to be spawning from. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is, and this is just for the sake of just creating things in the event graph and making sure that you can see things in certain viewports. If anyone is similar or familiar with the Maya way of modeling and moving certain objects around, you want to make sure that it moves within a certain grid space where you can still customize the size, the scale, the sort of angle, and the, what else am I looking for? Size, the scale, the angle. I think that's pretty much it, and the rotation of the object. But we also want to make sure that it's not too far or too close to our projectile.
Yeah, we're just using it.
You can keep going.
So the first thing that I want to do is I want to then change the set position grid snap value from 10 all the way up to 100. Actually, no, sorry. We're going to take it from 10 back down to 1. This gives me enough space to see where I'm going to be moving my arrow, and it also allows me to then move it closer and further away as I see fit. If we go back to the 10, you can see the difference within the grid, but if we go back to 10, you see that the space difference is actually a lot greater than it was before. So just to make sure that we are actually using the 1 pixel by pixel space ratio, we want to make our snap size 1, just so that way we're not making things too far or too close to each other. So we're going to go back into our event graph now that we have our laser cannon, and this is going to serve as our spawn point for our projectile. We're going to drag off our laser and we're going to bring it straight into our event graph and make sure that this is going to be our function. This is going to work somewhere later on as we implement the first sort of node that is going to follow after our custom event. So once we drag off the custom event right now, we're going to basically bring up what is known as a, let's see, I believe it's a spawn actor from class.
Yes,
Yeah.
disembodied voice.
Yeah.
He's been in the shot a few times, and I'm quite sure they assume he's the actual artist.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, no, do not take the fear.
Yeah, because you're frozen.
It's not me.
So, as I was saying, from our custom event, the first thing that we want to bring out is a spawn actor from class. Now, the class that we are going to pull up, which is more or less going to describe the actual actor that is going to be created once we press our key press, is our laser. And as you can see, my screen is kind of spazzing out. So I'm going to have to do this in a way where I can accurately press on what I'm doing. And I think I have the right selection there. And yes, it is going to spawn the actor, the number 9 key press, which is going to be our beam. So right now we have our fire laser, which is going to spawn our beam. Now it doesn't know where it's going to spawn it from. So once we press our our one key, it will probably just spawn it randomly within the world. So in order to change that, we're going to drag off our spawn transform. And what we're going to type in here is get world transform. Now, as you can see right here, it actually does show that it wants to get it from our arrow component, which is our laser cannon. I did drag that into the world over here. But once I press this, it's going to more or less create a function, which is going to be its own get world transform. And then it's going to drag that node off into the actual arrow component, which is our laser cannon. So it does the work for us. This is courtesy of the latest build of Unreal. I believe it's 14.2. So right now, since we're at this part, I can actually compile and save, and then I can turn it back over to Sean, who can describe some of the nuances or extra added features that we are going to have in our game.
The bonus features.
Jesus Christ.
Well,
Well,
what,
add this-
what bonus features and extra added shit are you talking about?
Christmas. Bro,
What game are we talking about?
Well, if we look at
Eric's trying to be wholesome and
yeah.
dropping.
if we look at most other space exploration games, even the ones that have currently released in this year, they have promised a lot of sort of added features in
What
their
you
games.
talking about specifically? Kyle?
I'm
You know
not
what,
gonna.
I'm just gonna stop.
I'm
you-
not gonna
I'm just
name any
gonna
names,
stop you
but-
right there and say so. The thing about the game, and that was discussed. Some of the stuff I discussed with you guys prior, and with the Boss Man, is that I mean the iteration initially, I think still would be Oregon Trail in space, but we also kind of want to step away from that and kind of add in some. One of the things that was kind of the point of contention with the last NGH was that there was nothing to do.
Mhm.
The base core basics of that. Most of the stuff was there. It's just that it got to a certain point where in space there was nothing to do. So now it's kind of like making space feel lonely, feel like you're isolated, feel like you're far from home. But
Mhm.
also there's some sort of activity in there. So before maybe the random event pop up, and say, hey, you're a rat infestation, or one of your crew went insane. Here's the one of the things I would like to push for is to at least half of those events be events that you can actually have some sort of interaction.
Mhm.
So think of it as simple as that rat infestation, right? It's primarily on the ship. So instead of you just tapping, okay, to announce that such an event happened, and then a random effect happened to your crew. It's now like, I can now have to like actually stop this infestation, or the other alternative is to let it auto resolve.
Mm.
I'm putting this in air quotes because it's like some zombie games where they tell you you can either manually
Take care of
participate
the
in the situation, or you can let it auto resolve. Me, because I'm a bad person, I'm like, if you let it auto resolve, then the consequences are going to be a lot harsher than if you were to do it yourself.
Mm.
So back to the rat infestation. You can select one of your guys, and you have to go through your ship, and kill all the rats and all that stuff, and then you'll be able to consequences thereafter. So it's like maybe your stress doesn't go up as much on having killed the rats personally as opposed to doing auto resolve.
Okay.
That's also just talking about on the ship, because I like the idea of having events happen both on the ship and in space. So, for example, say you come upon like a derelict ship. The part it used to be like you click on it and you got some resources from it.
Yeah.
Well, I want this to be in a sense to where you get an atmosphere of you get a feel of the atmosphere of the game, and you learn like about the background of the game itself. So say that you're right? It's a college. So now you have a choice. You can, well, technically two choices, where you can just kind of like you go to it and you can either leave it or you can further investigate. All right. So now you further
airlock 4.
You can grab
You
a
can grab
chance
your
to airlock
airlock 4,
which
which
is
you
a
few
few
pieces of metal and
extract
extract the
resources,
resources, or you can
investigate
investigate
what the hell
has
happened to this colony ship,
which
which
may
may
later
lead to
turn
kind of like
like
you're going. It's
like
like
sort of an involving quest
Okay.
to
where
where
okay,
you
you
go
go
into
into
this.
this,
Okay.
you go into
You
this,
go into this derelict ship. You go into this ship, and now
You can do it. Keep going.
so yeah, you go into
derelict
the ship.
and
Now it's involved.
okay,
All right,
you're
you're stuck there.
because
The
Mm.
environment,
the
airlock
is
sealed,
sealed, you can't get out of it, and then
and
you're
you're
transitioning
fishing.
over to
Okay,
not only do you have to
you have
get
to
yourself
yourself
out
out
of
of
it,
it.
you have to
You have to find out
what
what
to
to
the
the
crew,
crew,
and
and then finding out
what
what
to
the crew
it's
is
like,
like.
oh,
Oh,
now
now
we
we
have
have
to
to
stop
stop
the
the
virus
virus.
from
Mm.
think
Think
Resident
Resident.
Evil, right?
Yeah.
So like
I will like
I like
to have those type of evolving quests to where they can be
it could be
straightforward and simple. You
go
go there,
there,
you get the resources,
resource,
you get the smaller
smaller,
levels, for instance,
Mhm.
or
or
you decide to poke in
and
and
you know
actually see what
see.
the end game is.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
So I'm not
Listening
these
like
animals that are going to if you feed
you
them
keep
and
them.
they keep
Yeah.
evolving past you or not. I'm more what we're looking forward to is the option of giving you the choice
Choice
and whether
and
you
whether
want
you
to
want to
pursue a
pursue a
quest
quest
all the way
all
down
down,
or
Mm.
just to
or
the
just to
first
the first.
level. So think of
So
it
think of it as
as
30
right? You can go to the first level, or you can go to the
go to
second
the
level,
second,
or you can go
or
to
you
the
can go
final level
final
and
level.
figure out what exactly it
That
is.
is
Got it. Got it. Okay. So it's more. All right. I get it. I understand. Uh, so just for our viewers, we're going to bring it back to the event graph really quickly. I'm going to go through sort of all of the functions that we have here. I'm actually going to add one more thing, and then I'm going to sort of postpone what I'm doing for now. So I'm breaking the chain between the do once and the set function or the set timer by function name, just because I know that it's not going to act in the same way that I want it to uh, as the previous bullets have. There always is one function that you do want to add in between these two right now, and that is going to be the custom event that you do have right here. So if we call the function fire laser, it will call that function, and then we're going to drag that back into our set timer. So I don't know why Unreal does this, but it does. It sort of allows us to just have the bullet work the way we need it to. And until I figure out why it does what it does, I'm just going to implement it without asking any questions. So again, I'm going to compile. Okay, again, I'm going to compile and save. Just so that way we have all of our functions in here. And this is pretty much everything that we need in order to make our laser fire. So we're going to sort of highlight the entire thing. We're going to type C, which allows us to sort of bring up a group for it or a comment. We're going to call it fire laser. And when we go into the world, once we compile and save one more time, when we go into the world, everything should work the way we need it to. So I'm going to minimize this. We're going to bring up our level editor, which is actually right here already. We're going to press play. It says there are some compile errors. We're going to omit all of the errors that we do currently have. And we're just going to wait for our world to load right now. So it is loaded in. Unfortunately, there are some weird camera angles going on right now. What I realized is that I actually need to go into the levels, bring up the handcrafted sort of map training system that we do have, and then work from there. So once it loads, we're going to press play, and now we are live. So it's not allowing me to move just yet. There we go. And again, we do have the one key press set to our projectile. So once I type 1, it is spawning the arrow or the sort of laser that we do have. But as you can see, it does take up a wide amount of space, and it allows us to kind of fly into it. So we need to make sure that the laser both works on a delay and that it also has the sort of dissipating properties that we need it to. So the laser does function, it does fire out. It's actually really big, a lot bigger than the ship itself, and it does, as you can see, our ship does fly into it. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to stop that. We're going to go back into, oh, we're actually not going to pull that up. We're going to go back into our laser functionality that we do have. And we're just going to change some of the properties in terms of the speed and velocity of our projectile. So going back up into our BP player ship, we're going to go into our number 9 beam. And as you can see, once I bring up the viewport, as you can see, it should have somewhere within the details. Actually, sorry, we have to click on the actual mesh itself. It's going to have a detail somewhere down here which allows me to change the velocity of our projectile. We're going to look all around for it, and until we find it, we will include it in there. So while I'm looking for while I'm looking for the function, I believe it actually might be in a projectile collision. While I'm looking for the function in order to make our laser mesh move, I will pass it back over to Sean, who can talk to you guys about some of the other stuff that we do plan on having in the game.
Right. So one of the things
that
I mentioned
was
was
earlier,
earlier,
and one of our
is
is
the fact that
we've gotten
not
rid of the whole
difficult.
aging aspect. So
So
right
right
now,
now,
we're actually going with the insanity meter,
and
which is a lot ironically a lot more forgiving, and that
and that
you'll only be able to kind of reduce the insanity
and
on the characters and allow them to live longer, and you can actually sort of grow
so
closer bond with you, which will also help personality too.
one of the other
Things
things
that come around too is that we're actually going to have
to
sort of
gut
level sort of tutorials
tutorial
in which you can get a better
better
feel of how to actually play the game. Because
because I think that
the larger
the
problem
problem
with
with
the
the
first
first
one
one
is
was
that
that
the
the
tutorial
tutorial
were
were
a
a
bit
bit
miss,
and
and
that
that
he was
we're
trying
trying
to
to also develop
develop
these
these
minds
minds,
and function
function,
environment
environment
to
to
where
where
there
there
wasn't
wasn't
much control. We have a lot of
a lot of
control
control
now
now
over
over
how
how
things
things
spawn,
spawn
when they spawn,
and
how the
how the
levels
level
actually assemble.
symbol.
We
We
can
can
focus
focus
and
and
set
set
time
time
maybe
maybe
in
these
these tutorials,
tutorials,
even
even
though
though
they
they
may once or twice,
you can
still
still
set
set
it
it
up
up
so that
set up
it's
its
all
own little
level
spot
where the
where the
tutorial
tutorials
set up
would
how to how to maneuver the vessel, how to maneuver the characters, going down to
going
the
down to
planet, picking up items, investigating stuff.
then
Then
later on
into
into
the
the bigger. That being
big
said,
probably
probably
a
have
sort
sort
of
of turn off the field we
make
make.
there's
There's
no
no
incentive
it's just a to actually
get
get
you
you
into
into and it's not all of the first 5 to 10 minutes.
I really have
You really have to go.
Okay. So, excuse me, coming back to, I'm actually going to cancel that really quickly. Coming back to the laser, we actually needed to add a component which is projectile movement, just to make sure that our actor or our mesh does move throughout the world and that it's not a stationary sort of beam. What we're going to do right now is I've already included it in there, but I will delete it just so I can show you guys where to add different components for your mesh. Right over here right above the blueprint section, there is another section for components. There is a giant green button that says add component. And in here you can search. You can actually scroll through the entire selection here, but you can search for something specific if you know what you're looking for. So we're going to go for projectile movement right now. And the thing that we want to do right here is make sure that our laser speed is moving at least at the same speed as our standard ship. So if we go back into the ship, we do have a function here for our set speed using the thrust input, and it sets our current forward speed to 100. which then changes our minimum and maximum speed accordingly. But now that we know that our default value for current forward speed is 100, all we need to do is go back into our beam, go into our projectile movement, and set our initial speed to 100. We're actually going to set it to 110. That way it's a little bit in front of our actor, just to make sure that our actor is never going to run into it. And then we're going to max out our speed at 110 as well, even though this is only going to be alive for about 2 seconds. We don't need to worry about bounciness or friction. We can turn all of those off later. However, we're actually just going to minimize almost everything else. The homing, we don't need it to home. And it doesn't necessarily have to have its own velocity because we've already set projectile speed for it. So we can minimize all of this other stuff. And as you can see, once I tap this little arrow on the side, it organizes all of the extra details that we do have for this event. So going back into the event graph, we do have our set lifespan. We have, again, set it to 1.5. I'm actually going to lower that down to 1 second. I'm going to compile and save. Remember, always save your work before you test anything out. And then we're going to go back into our ship event graph. The same event graph that we used not only to create the different projectiles, but it's also the one that we have been using to currently house our current fire laser function. So everything right here is how you would get the standard projectile to work. It's basically a copy of the standard projectile function. The only difference is that we have changed the sort of laser we changed the standard projectile into the laser by simply taking the object out and replacing it with its different spawn actor. Again, if you wanted to duplicate or sort of have a trail of these, all you would need to do is just create a branch and then sort of copy this entire thing and make sure that you're spawning it from another spawn point or Git world transform. So everything right here works. We know that our key press is calling a do once, which is going to activate our custom event right here in its own function. That will then set a timer by its own function name, which will work as a looping fire laser, which is the same name as our custom event. And then the time here, we can then drag off and promote to a variable and set that as our specific firing rate. Once we take our finger off the one key press, it clears the timer, which then resets everything and allows us to shoot another laser as we see fit. Going down into here, this is basically the custom event for our firing laser. It shows us, it allows us to show us what we want it to do, which is spawn the actor. It drags it from the Git world transform, which is our laser cannon, which if we go back into the viewport, is the giant red arrow coming from the front of our ship. So the first thing that we actually want to do really quickly before we finish is we're going to drag the arrow off a little bit in front of our ship. That way it doesn't spawn straight from the middle. The laser doesn't spawn straight from on top of our actual spaceship, and it doesn't sort of do that clipping that it had done before when we tested it out the first time. We're going to save that really quickly. We're going to go back into the world, and we're going to make sure that this does that this works the way we want to. But first, we're going to go back into the viewport. We're going to click on our sphere, and we are going to change the material just so that we're able to view it in the world. We're going to look for the one material that we need to find is the same material that we have for all of the other previous projectiles. And as you can clearly see, my screen has started to slow down on me. So in the meantime, I will pass it back over to Sean, who can talk about maybe either the music or the art direction.
So, let's start with So I think with the music, I'll tell you personally, some of the influences I'm looking at, it's like Vangelis. If you don't know, he did some music for Blade Runner.
Okay.
But the Vangelis is usually, his music is so surreal. This sort of, if you think the 80s of surrealism, yeah. But looking at also John Carpenter, the Duffett brothers, and if you guys don't know,
well,
create
they
a show. Fuck it.
okay. Stranger Things.
The
The
for Stranger
Things is
Things
so
is
is
so
so
good. I mean, even there, the theme
the thing
song, which
which
is
is
inspired
inspired,
by John Carpenter and some of those Stephen King books,
you know,
I just
I
love that deep bass
this
rum
rum
tone and
and
the idea of like synth.
synth.
So
So
that's
I
what we want for our music is we want
we
to
want
have
to
the there's some
some
flair and
clear
flair and rap out in the 80s and synth.
sense.
But if
But
you
if you
go back
go
and
back
listen to some of
to
those
some of the
songs from
songs,
the time, especially like
especially
horror
horror
films,
films,
science
science
fiction,
fiction,
it has
it's
this somber,
somber,
ominous type of
ominous,
feel to
and
it, and that's what I
that's
like
what
that it's mostly
most people say.
make
You
it
may
a
get
simple
a
surprise,
surprise, something there.
violin, that, but to really
It's really
conjure what's going on, but just
but
in a
just
really humble, something that
something
you were born with,
you
Mhm.
don't know what it is.
Mhm.
space,
Space,
fucking accessibility
accessibility
is absolute
still,
but we have to make it work somehow.
Mm.
you know,
That's why I
that's
want
why
our
I'm
music to be so
so
catchy. But there are also
also
certain spots
hot
and certain
in
certain
certain
places
places
where
where
it's like
it's like
it's not
it's not
darkness with
darkness.
every bit of Pandora's box. The last thing that
Passing
Pandora's box is hope.
hope.
So
Well,
we want to invoke
it's
that
like that
when it comes to those
to
certain
those
places
places
and
meet
certain people.
people.
And you get to
You
this
get to the
whole idealized paradise,
paradise,
writer still has
still has
moments of darkness, but
darkness,
it's all over this like
Mm.
I feel safe here.
feel safe.
But I think
But I think
overall
overall,
we're looking
we're
definitely
looking
towards the
definitely
80s and synth wave,
you know,
that type
that
of music. I think that's what we want. Art
art
wise, it's still up for debate. I think
I
what's
think
going to happen is we're
after
not going to go for realism, especially with a
especially
game
with the
like this. I mean, just
I mean
think,
just think
going back to what
going
I
back
said before, just
or
think of the
just think of the
80s,
80s,
right? It
right?
was
It's
just
just
a kit
a kid
bash of
bash
this
is
weird
weird.
shit. Who wears a
Who wears a
tutu
tutu
and
and
leggings,
liking
jean
Jean
jacket?
Jack?
Not Thomas.
Yeah. If you're from District 1.
But like,
But
just
like
I like
I
that
like
idea.
the
So
idea.
I
So
think
I
what's going
think
to
what's
happen
gonna
is we're
happen
going to
is
be
we're gonna be
the game is
the
going to
game
be
is gonna be
it's going to have stylized.
stylized.
There's going to be a
It's gonna be a
mesh
mix
of
of
2D and 3D
2D
elements, but it's
it's
probably going to be a 2.5D with some very stylized, cell shaded type of feel. So that lose some
with
line
some
with
line.
what going on.
Assassinate.
Anyway, yes. Oh. Uh-huh. So just disregard some of the noises that you're hearing on the side. We're gonna finish up really quickly, but I'm gonna let Sean finish what he was saying.
Oh
Oh
no,
no,
it's
it's just
just I like the idea. I think
I think
generally the
the
best way
best
to describe the atmosphere that we've been saying before,
you know
it's
it's
not that
not that
dark and
dark,
gritty
great
shit that you've been hearing as of recently. Like,
like
oh my
oh
god,
my
like Power Rangers, right? Power
Yeah.
Rangers is like the perfect imitation of, just
just can't
campy 90s
90s.
goodness. It's not
It's
the
not the
80s,
80s,
but
but
it kind of
it
falls
falls
back.
back.
If you actually
You actually
study,
study
study history, you'll realize that the 80s kind of extended into the 90s a little bit. But
but
just think
just think
like remember that
remember
when you was a kid. You
yeah
remember the
remember
fucking wacky ass rubber suited monsters and
Yeah.
colorful suits
suits
with mullets and
mullet
Tommy and
Tommy
stuff.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now
And
we're
now
getting this rebooted
reboot
version, which is
is
dark and
dark.
gritty and edgy and moody. That is
That
not
is not
what I'm trying to what we're trying to
we're trying
achieve here. When we
when we
say
say
dark and moody
move
and
and
ominous,
on
we're talking about like the despair
despair
of
of
Warhammer 40k, the
the
neon
neon
goodness
goodness
and the
and the
overcasted
past
Blade
Blade
Runner. When
Runner
Deckard
and
is
Deckard
sitting
sitting
under
in
the neon
God
lights of
lights
Tokyo, watching out
watching out
his
to his
wounds.
boot.
Uh,
Uh,
is
just
the
I think it was Los Angeles instead.
Los Angeles,
but
but
it felt like
it
Neo
felt like
Tokyo. I'm thinking of Akira.
Akira.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell,
Mhm.
even anime at
anime
that time, right? Which was of some
they still have certain
edge
edge
to them, but in that way of like, you know, it's just
just
shit was
shit was
real.
real.
And
Mhm.
I guess that's the best way to put it is we want
We
shit
want
to be
shit.
real. We want things to be dark and
Dark
gritty and fucked up for fucked up's sake.
sake.
We want it
We
to
want
be
it
like,
you know,
After D.
yeah.
or
Or
what's the other one? Helsing?
Helsing?
Like I love
I
this
love
movie,
it.
but
But
Helsing
Helsing,
No, 'cause this man just seriously. All right, y'all, because this man just seriously.
Oh no.
subverted
So
me
we're gonna
for a
actually we're gonna get back
second.
into the
Cowboy Bebop?
we're gonna get back into the
Isn't that what
projectile
Outlaw
movement. I'm
Cowboy?
sorry to cut you off,
Isn't
Sean,
it Cowboy?
but just to show these people, just to show our audience what we have here,
yeah.
and we can continue the conversation later. But those are actually some really good points. We're actually making not a dark and moody game similar to the early '90s, where everything was sort of raining and characters were covered in like lead and they had their chin down, eyes up type of thing.
Oh,
We're
talking
actually
about
going.
now?
No. I'm saying we're sort of diverting from
Well, I would
the
say
sort of angst,
teen
dark,
angst,
yeah,
so
like
you mean,
dark movie and
I think
yeah, the
now
edge,
of
not
like
edge lords.
think
If that
of
makes sense.
fucking what's
We're looking for a more actual.
Superman. That's terrible. I'm sorry, but that's like just terrible. And the fact of why it's desaturated. It's
Mhm.
purely gray for no reason. I mean, it's filled with so much teenage
Not-
angst.
yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
we're
not
not
a.
for that.
It's not a inherently sort of dystopian film like as those ones that you mentioned before. So this is something that we're going for. So just to sort of segue off of that, and just to go and not really recover, just to go over everything that we've done in to recap everything that we've done in the stream today. We created a BP player ship. Actually, the BP player ship was already created. We just added a new functionality to it, which is the firing laser function. So we set our key press to do an action once, which is then calling our function fire laser, which then works on its own timer, which makes sure that we have our own fire rate and our looping mechanism. We then clear the timer once we release our finger off, and then we make sure that our custom event does what we need it to do, which is then spawn our actor, the laser, from our Get World transform into the laser cannon. This is more or less an entire recap on the first video that we did, where we talked about the basic projectiles. But instead of sort of spawning the basic projectile, it is now going to spawn something a lot larger. So going back into the beam, we have our event begin play, which is setting its own lifespan of 0.5 seconds. We do have a specific projectile movement, which is about a little bit faster than the initial speed of our ship, just to make sure that they don't collide. And then when we go into the world, we test it out, and then we have our function for our ship, and there's our laser. As you can see, it's kind of an oval form right now. We can then change the mesh as we see fit, and then we can specify the sort of angle at which it spawns from our cannon as well. So that will end everything in the stream that we have for this Tuesday, December 6th. Again, I've been the artist with the pro, working for Goodnight Games. My cohort, the CPO, the gracious CPO, who has been informing you guys of any of the added details that we will have in NGH2, has been a wonderful guest, and all of the other ambient voices that you have picked up throughout the stream are some of the other workers and cohorts that we will include later on in future videos in our. But yes, Space, the Final Frontier
These are the voyages.
of the Goodnight Games Enterprise.
These are the voyages of the good night.
Oh,
should we do our Leonard Nimoy?
Actually, no. We need
Catch,
we do need an outro. There are some people that do have outros. Artists with a pro. But
Fuck you. Fuck you.
but for all sakes and for all sakes and purposes, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Again, we do have our daily stream.
Facebook, YouTube, Twitch.
Check out our
Agree.
website.
Again, we do have our daily.
Greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes, ram.
Yeah. Again, we do our basic streams every Tuesday, so tune in for those. But as I said before, this has been the Artist with a Fro. This has been my CPO, and
Your CPO.
Hold on.
that is
All right.
All right.
So
good night.
good night.
Games.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
no.
no,
I got it. I say we both. You say good night. I say good night.
I say games. What?
Why don't we just have one person say
I
goodnight,
know I can't. I hear you.
and then the other person say game?
This ain't about me, man. This is
Alright.
about- Yeah, you done
Alright.
fucked up.
So
Anyway,
good night, sleep tight,
You're
and keep up with playing our games, mates.
And follow our social media.
Games.
Good night.
And we're fucking.
Dom does the bad thing.
Oh yeah, no. In Vampire Hunter D, they went into space. They did. I was just like, oh, space. What the fuck?
You know we're still recording,
Are your shields up?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. Sure. And then they played that Gundam music.
Yeah.
He's like, he's not gonna fire on our base.
I know. I'm